Hi everyone, welcome back to The Mystic in the Woods. I'm Kate, and today we're going to be talking about inner child healing, what it is, and how to get started. So if you've been around the channel for a while, you've probably heard me mention inner child work because there are a couple of decks I really like for it, and I know I've mentioned at least a couple of times how it's been one of the most impactful things I've done on my own healing journey, especially to make a change in my day-to-day life. And it's become a cornerstone of my regular practice, of my practice with other people. It's really just been, as I said, the most impactful thing I have found or seen to make changes in our day-to-day lives. So of course, in a video about inner child healing, we need to start with what the inner child is, right? So the inner child really is just the unconscious piece of us that is composed of all the childhood experiences that we had. So it's sort of the piece of us sitting in our unconscious that's stuck in childhood. And it's really stuck in childhood, projecting our childhood experiences onto our current lives in order to get those needs met. So the inner child isn't our enemy, and there's nothing to shame or judge. Our inner child is just trying to keep us safe and get our needs met. However, they are viewing the present moment through the lens of what happened to us when we were children, and they're projecting that onto the current situation. So children don't think in nuances, right? Children think very black and white. So this is about, yes, what happened to us as children, but it's also about what we perceived as children. So there are lots of things in my own childhood that as an adult, I look back on, and from my logical adult perspective, I understand why it went down that way. I understand the nuance. I understand that everybody was doing the best they could with what they had, and in my personal case, did a really good job. But it's not about what I know now. It's about how my inner child, how my childhood self, my 5-year-old version of me, perceived what was happening. So that's what the inner child is, right? It's that unconscious piece of us sitting in our shadow, sort of stuck in childhood and projecting all of that stuff and all of those perceptions onto the current moment. Okay, so that's kind of what the inner child is. So let's talk about what inner child healing is. But before we talk about what it is, I want to quick mention what it's not. It is not about judging or shaming ourselves. It is not about blaming our parents. It is not about re-traumatizing ourselves or gaslighting ourselves into, oh, it wasn't that bad, or anything like that. Inner child healing, in my opinion, is really about healing our inner child and learning to reparent ourselves so that when we're feeling triggered or activated in our day-to-day life, we can take a step back and provide those needs we needed when we were a child so that it stops impacting what is happening in our adult lives. So it's about putting our adult self back in the driver's seat and learning to parent our inner child ourselves. Okay, so a couple more things before we get into the sort of how to get started with inner child work. So first, it's important to remember, I think, or to understand that nervous system healing really overlaps with inner child healing. Because when we are feeling activated or triggered in our bodies or in our emotions about something that has a historical root in our childhood, our nervous system is responding as if we were still in that moment. And so we can do, the whole fight, flight, freeze, fawn, these types of things. It's really important to be aware of the fact that our nervous system and our inner child are really just trying to keep us safe and get our needs met. So again, this is not about shaming ourselves or judging ourselves for how we behaved as children or what's happening now in our adult lives. This is about reparenting ourselves, specifically the inner child, who again is not thinking in nuance. The inner child is looking through the lens of childhood, right? And so we want to be really gentle with ourselves when we're doing this work. And along those lines, it's also important to understand that you may need somebody to help hold space for you while you do this work. Especially if you have any sort of big T trauma or things like that in your history. Do not hesitate to work with a therapist or a coach or a shadow work facilitator or a trusted tarot reader or even a friend who's really talented at holding that type of space. The goal is never to re-traumatize ourselves. The goal is always to be staying in regulated states, processing emotions as they come up, and learning to really heal and reparent and to heal our nervous systems at the same time. I hold space for people in shadow work containers, both one-on-one and in small groups. I know lots of other people that do. And again, even therapy is a really great place to be engaging in this work. So let's talk about a few ways to get started, okay? So first of all, I'm going to briefly mention that, of course, if you use tarot or oracle cards, you can absolutely use that to help with your inner child. I'm not going to talk about that too much here because I do have a whole video on that planned for my tarot and shadow work series that we're doing here on the channel. So if you're watching this sort of as this video was published, then stay tuned. If you're watching this in the future, check out the tarot and shadow work playlist because it'll be there, and we're going to talk about how to use tarot to help with inner child healing. We're going to talk about the court cards and their role in that, and things like that. So card work can be a really great way to kind of start bringing that unconscious stuff to the surface, as well as how we can support ourselves through inner child work, because it can be quite activating, especially depending on, what we've been through as children. Now, the second way that you can get started with inner child work is in meditation. So I talked about meditation in the shadow work video, so you're going to want to go back and check that out as well, because inner child work is sort of a subcategory of shadow work, because your inner child is generally an unconscious piece of you and it's holding unconscious wounding. And remember, your shadow is your unconscious, so it's not bad stuff, it's just stuff that's unconscious. So you can go back and watch that video. I talk about meditation in there as well. Now, when we're going to go through meditation to work on our inner child or work with our inner child or heal or reparent, all that stuff, I think there's a couple important safety considerations to keep in mind so that you, again, aren't accidentally re-traumatizing yourself. First of all, I think if you're doing a psycho-spiritual form of shadow work, which is what I do think that it's important you have a relationship with at least one of your guides who can help bring you to the right memories or to the right wounding and can help you uncover only what you're ready to uncover and work through. So I think that can be really important. And then second, again, engaging in deep meditation with the help of a shadow work facilitator or tarot reader or therapist or something like that can also be really helpful, so that you, again, we're never trying to re-traumatize ourselves. That is never the goal here. So within meditation, there's two things that I have found really impactful. Now, the first one is the one where you really may want to seek support. And that is where we can actually go into a deep meditation with the intention of bringing forth the original wounding or the original memory or whatever it was that is causing the issue in our day-to-day lives right now. And we can replay that memory and we can sort of heal it. Now, shadow work is never about changing the memory. We're not trying to install a different memory. What we're trying to do is heal the memory and how it is stored in our body so that it's not having so much hold over what's happening in our current lives. So we can go into our memory, go into our unconscious in meditation, bring forth that memory, really figure out what's at the root of the wounding, and things like that. And then we can heal that memory, either with the help of our guides or with whatever facilitator you're working with. The other thing that you can do in meditation is really just engage with your inner child. So I have a room in my inner temple where my inner child lives, and I will go into there and I will hang out with her and reparent her, and we'll go on adventures and things like that. And that really creates safety. I can meet her needs in there and those types of things. Third thing to get started with your inner child healing is in your day-to-day life, when you're finding yourself activated by something, learning to take a step back and pause and go, okay, what is my inner child so upset about? what does my inner child, what need does she need to have met in this moment? And learning to do that. What is this really about, and how can I meet that need? Now, the other thing that you can really do to be getting started on your inner child healing is the nervous system healing. So somatic exercises, vagus nerve exercises. I don't know why I have trouble with that, because they're not hard words. There's just something about going from the V to the N that my brain is just never wants to say right. But vagus nerve things. So this is all stuff that you can Google. So there's breathing exercises, there's tapping exercises, there's other somatic and embodiment exercises. One of the ones that works really well for me, that was taught to me by my mentor, is to do VU breathing. So you can Google that, but it really is just like VU over and over for like 3 solid minutes. And that can help to like tone your vagus nerve and kind of settle everything down in your nervous system. So that is kind of how I would get started with reparenting and inner child work, right? We're going to talk about tarot and oracle work more in an upcoming video. You can do it in meditation. Learning to reparent yourself during the day is the simplest one, but also the hardest one. And then nervous system rewiring as well. And so while I know that can sound like a lot, it's one of those things that I think in some ways sounds very simple, like, oh, that's all that inner child work is. Well, but it's hard to do in the moment. But that is where the power for this is it really can make drastic changes in our day-to-day lives when we learn to reparent ourselves, provide the needs that our inner child has, and start to feel safe in our own bodies, so that we stop projecting childhood crap onto the people and situations and things in our daily adult lives, which is of course not an excuse for a toxic or abusive person in your life. So I want to make that very clear, that you healing is not an excuse for toxic and abusive people in your lives. But in my life, for example, I have a very healthy relationship, but I do tend to project childhood stuff right onto my husband. And what that means is that I see his actions, I hear his words, all through the lens of the wounding from my inner child. So none of it's his. It's all mine. And when I can clear that off and see him clearly, then we can actually communicate through whatever it is that we need to communicate through. So I'm going to end here so that we don't get this feeling too long. But if you have any questions about this, if there's anything you'd like to explore more about, let me know in the comments below, and stay tuned for the tarot and shadow work video where we're going to talk about specifically using card work for this. All right, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.